Hello, wherever you are in the world today. Welcome to Beyond the Art and our series, The Stories That Carry Us. I'm your host, Craig Beaumont Flynn, a citizen of the Cherokee Nation and the Delaware Tribe of Indians. In each episode, we will discuss with various Native American artists, influencers, art leaders, and everyone in between their experiences, the communities they serve, and the translation and interpretation of the Native American art world today. Well, today we have with us Johnnie Diacon, a Muskogee Creek Nation citizen. Welcome to the show, Johnnie.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your story, about being a Native American artist and who you are and what you do.
Okay, well, I'm Johnnie Diacon. I'm Muskogee. I'm Flop tribal town in Deer Clan. And I've been doing art for about 40 years now. I've been doing art ever since I was a little boy. I'm 60. So I've been doing it most of my life. As far back as I can remember, I've been putting some kind of marking material to some kind of, paper or wood or whatever I can get my hands on. So I've been doing it for a long time. Of course, naturally, I do native art. I do my people because that's what I know. And so that's what I'm around. And so that's where my influences come from my subject matter and what interests me. And so that's one of the reasons why I do it.
What inspires you to do your artwork?
It comes to me, I just, at night when I'm sleeping, a lot of times, I feel like I'm awake, even though I'll wake up and I'll actually be asleep. But during these periods, ideas will come to me, and in these dreams, I will actually figure out how I want to do a project or what I want that project to be. And so, a lot of it comes to me in dreams, and so I wake up and I wake up early before the sun rises. And I start work. I get out my studio and start working. Sometimes I'm even when I should be asleep. Sometimes I'm out in that studio working because whenever that mood hits me or that idea hits me, I gotta start working on it. It's almost like eating or any function you do, like breathing or something. It just comes to me naturally, and so I just do it. And sometimes I don't really think where it comes from because it's just there. It's like waking up and you're awake, and those ideas and things just come to me like that. It's there, and I work on it and make it happen as best as I can.
So in the wee hours of the morning when you get up and you've been inspired by your dream, what's the next step of your process in creating your pieces?
Well, sometimes in the dreams, I don't really know exactly how I'm going to, what medium I may want to do it in. I just know I've got this idea. And once I get to the studio, it just starts slowly coming to me. It's kind of like you wake up and you're hungry. You're not quite sure what you want to eat, but then all of a sudden you realize, this sounds good or this sounds good. And so you start fixing that food. And that's what I do with this art. I think, well, this is what I want to do. How do I want to do it? What sounds good? I think, do I want to do a flat traditional style like I used to do? Like that's when I originally first started out because that's my first exposure to that kind of art. Or do I want to do a more modern contemporary look? Do I want to do it in oil or acrylic or watercolor? And so, as those little ideas come to me, I start going from there. And also sometimes it just depends what time of the year it is. The seasons will play a big part on how I want to go about doing a piece. If I want to do it in oil and acrylic or watercolor, because my studio, it's a nice studio. That's where I'm at right now. It's insulated fairly well. So in the winter times, it doesn't get real cold out here. I usually, if I have water out here for my acrylics or watercolor, it won't freeze. So it doesn't get that cold. I got a little heater, so it doesn't get too cold on me. In the summertime, it gets hot, but it's insulated enough that it stays nice. If it's like 90s even, it'll be like in the 80s in here. But if it gets into the hundreds, and it's on the west side of my house. If the sun starts shining, it gets a little hot out there. So I
I
usually move
bet.
inside in the winter times or in summer times where it's air conditioned because I can do watercolors in there. And it's easy clean up and out of the way. So my wife says, "Hey, it's dinner time," or get out of the way or whatever. I can just fold that
Right.
up, put it away. Where with acrylics, oil paint, yeah, the fumes and everything. She doesn't want that in the house, and that's what the studio's for. So that also depends, what time of the year, what medium I'll go about, and also room. If I'm going to do a big painting, it's easier to do it out in my studio because I got plenty of room out
Mhm. So, when you're inspired by your dreams, are they usually more indicative of historical or cultural elements related to being a Muskogee Creek Nation citizen, or are they just inspirational, taking elements from it and you kind of reinterpreting and translating into a different form or vision?
here. Well, a lot of times when these streams come to me, it's something I'm real familiar with. I do a lot of scenes of modern day life and things going on.
Mhm.
So a lot of times, as I'm dreaming, it's events that are taking place, and that kind of inspires me, and that sets me into this. I need to recreate this, what I've seen in my head or what's going on in the dream. So most of the time, these they're pretty right on to the what's happening. Sometimes they get a little like dreams will, just get a little wild out there, but still stays within that cultural, uh, the boundaries of that. So it's recognizable because when I do my work, I try to do it. It's like a record keeper, and I want these
Mhm.
images, when I do them, to be pretty correct and accurate because that's part of being the artist, and you're kind of like a storyteller and a record keeper, and so you want to do these things because other people are going to see them. So I
Correct.
try to keep that focused within that cultural balance. So when it goes out there, people who are Muskogee will see that and recognize it, and it's proper. It's nothing that will offend anybody. It's incorrect or something
Correct.
shown that
Mhm.
shouldn't be shown, or what's shown is shown improper. So I try to keep it reined in so it doesn't get too crazy. But I do have pieces, and most of them are usually. That the dreams will take me to places where they're just fantastic, and I'll do those pieces. And it still has, because I can't get away from it because of who I am and where it comes from. It still
Right.
has that indigenous flair to it. So when you see it, you know that it's done by an indigenous person.
Well, it's part of your DNA as well.
Yeah, I
I would
just can't get
assume
away
that
from it.
it's right.
And I don't want
You
to.
can't run and hide. It's gonna follow you.
Yeah.
So, what defines you as a Native American artist, or what defines you as a Muskogee Creek artist?
Well, I mainly do Muskogee subjects,
Mhm.
because that's who I am. And, I think it's important to represent. And through the years, I've done art shows and I've seen a lot of great artwork by Muskogee artists, but sometimes, and because the market dictates that from, the dominant society, what their idea of native art is, they don't
Right.
particularly do Muskogee subject matters. They'll do uh, native subject matters that's dominant society's used to seeing because the market dictates. If you're going to sell Indian art, a lot of times it's got to look a certain way because that's what non-natives who buy a lot of this art, that's what they come to expect. And they're driven by stereotypes that they've seen in Westerns and their idea of what Indians are. So
Right.
to me, it's important representation. And our people love to see our images. Muskogee people love to see Muskogee representation. And so I've always been fascinated with the older artists that did that. And one of uh, my biggest idols was Solomon McCombs because he did a lot of
Okay.
Muskogee subject matter. And so, I loved Woody Crumbo, loved his style
Mhm.
and everything, but he didn't do Muskogee work because he wasn't Muskogee.
Correct.
But I loved his work, and I love Solomon McCombs. So those older guys really influenced me, as far as style and then subject matter. And so it's important to me to do Muskogee work because I'm Muskogee. I like to be honest with my work, and I think it's important for Native artists to, since we've got this responsibility as far as representation of who we are and our people are, to do within our own people, because our stories and our images and all this have been told by other people for so long. And now, we've got this opportunity for us to tell our stories and represent our images and put out to the world to who we are, who we are, we know we are, and we feel we are. And so that's why it's important to me to, as a Muskogee artist, to do Muskogee subject matters. And, there's other artists, from other tribes that do their work. And that's why I say, if you want that kind of work, go to those guys, because there are plenty of fantastic artists out there from those tribes doing that work. And so, if you want native art and you want to be a collector of native art, collect it all, because it's wonderful work. And it's so diverse. If you want a great collection and just cover everything, there's so many native nations and so many artists out there doing such wonderful work that you can't go wrong with native art.
Right. You got to go to the source.
You got to go to the source.
Story.
Always go to the source.
Yeah. Absolutely. Do you feel you take challenges in your work? Are you very true to your vision, or do you actually take challenges and risk?
I take challenges and risk every time I feel like I go to the, whatever canvas or illustration board or whatever, because I still have this self-doubt when I go. Am I, even after all these years? And I do it, I do it. And I always surprise myself. And sometimes it doesn't always work out the way I originally thought it was going to. Sometimes it comes out even better. So I surprise myself. So, my late father, he was a sign painter, and he used to paint hand letter signs. And he'd get out there, and he was really good at it. And he would go out and do these signs, and he'd gather people up, and they'd watch him do it. And they'd say, "Oh, that looks easy. I want to try it." So, he hands them a brush and stuff, and then they find out it's not that easy to, hand letter those signs like he made it look, so they always tease him, called him easy money, because he looked like he was making his money real easy because he was good at what he did. And I asked him one time as a little boy, I said, "Dad," I said, "is it easy?" And he goes, "No." He goes, "It's hard." He goes, but it's when you're good and you can make it look easy. That's when you're good. When you can make the hard stuff look easy, that's when you're good. So, a lot of times it may look easy, but it's hard work. And I put in a lot of work in these. They're not just whipped out and just, like a lot of people think, oh, art's easy, but it's work. It's hard work. And so sometimes
it's time consuming.
Time consuming, and there's a lot of effort goes into it. And so sometimes when I pull something off, I'm really pleased, and I'm even more pleased when someone else sees it and can enjoy it, and that's really touches me when I put all that work in it and someone sees it and they want to make it a part of their life. They want to they see that piece and touches so much. They've got to have it. They've got to have it in their life and share it with other people. And so that's when I know I've done a good job.
Fantastic. So what mediums do you work in? Paint, in oil, and pencil, and charcoal?
Yeah, acrylic. I do acrylic and watercolor. I used to do a lot of pencil work, and when I first started out in the early 80s, I did a lot of pen and ink work. Most of my stuff if you could find my older stuff, it was pen and ink work in pastel. I did a lot of pastel, and I didn't do like pastel like you would normally see. I used to use a like one color pastel and worked on a colored pastel paper because I was just starting out. I hadn't been to school to learn how to use these materials. I was teaching myself as I was going along, and I did a lot of pastel works. So my older pieces, which are kind of hard to find, now.
Yeah, that's good though.
That's what I did. Yeah, it's funny now because I went to school at Bacone College, and we would do work there, our student work. Ruthie Blaylock Jones was my instructor there, and she would give us assignments, and we would do on little scrap mat board these little assignments that she'd set up for us. Well, that was homework, and we would turn them in, and she would grade them and critique them and everything. And every now and then, the president of the school would go on some fundraising trip, and so he would call over and said, "I would like to take some of your student work with me, to promote the art department in the school, and we can always sell these little pieces. So we made a little money off of it. We didn't sell them for much,
Hmm.
5, $10, little, you're selling your homework basically is what you're doing. Well, they weren't the best because they were student work. And so every now and then one of those will show up online on the online auction. And I haven't seen this piece and I may have forgot about it. There it is. And I'm looking at it going, oh, that is so horrible. It looks so bad compared to what I did now. Because it was student work, it was like selling your math homework or English homework. Now it's showing
Well,
up
you
online.
were emerging artist. You were creating and doing your craft.
Yeah, that's what sold because a lot of people buy those because they're buying emerging artists. These guys may end up being a big name. They bought their pieces when they were first starting out. So, so every now and then, it's usually older people that have passed in state sales. These will show up on online auctions and they go for way more than what I ever sold them for, the $5 and $10 I sold them for, and it doesn't happen very often. So I don't see a lot of my pieces come back in. So hopefully they're enjoyed enough that people are hanging on to them. And I do get contacted by people since I've been doing it for so long that now have a piece that they've inherited or they bought it from an older person, because they've had to, they went into a care facility or something. And so their stuff goes up for sale or an estate sale and they'll show me a picture of it. And they're just as pleased to have it as that original person that they got it from. And that's kind of nice to know that your work's still out there and living
Yeah.
its life. Like it's like raising your children up and you send them out in the world and hope they have a good life. And every now and then they'll come back and visit you, and they're having
Yeah.
a great life. It's wonderful. It makes me feel good that I'm doing what I need to do. I'm reaching people. My stuff's important, and it's just a good feeling.
So when you see those pieces, do you look at them and think, I've grown, I've mastered my craft, but is there still an essence or part of your DNA in those pieces that you still carry on today that you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm still doing it this way because that hasn't changed, or I haven't changed my brushstrokes or my vision or how the how you create those pieces. I mean, do you see like a self-reflection from the older to now?
I do, and some of them I see, uh, particularly after I had a few more education, a little bit more education as my skill grew. I would see those pieces and I look at them and go, that's not half bad. I did a good job on that. I didn't realize how good that piece was,
Give a little pat in the back and
Yeah,
like,
I was like,
hey, not bad guy.
job well done, and I could still see some of the things that I do then that I picked up. And through the years, my style has kind of stayed the same, but I've matured with it and developed things with it.
Mhm.
And also, when I was starting out, I was trying all kinds of styles, and I still kind of do that because, as Ruthie said, I had a schizophrenic style because I was always painting different styles, but I was enjoying what I was doing so much, and I was a sponge for seeing all these new techniques and ideas, and I was just eating it up. I
Mhm.
was living the life, I loved art and I loved all the different things and the influences, and that's why I liked art school. That energy and the power of being around all these creative minds and seeing what people were doing and trying out new things and getting a chance to use new mediums and techniques you never even dreamed of or had the ability to use. These things were coming to me now. And so, my art, those style and techniques grew from there. I still use a lot of the things I've always done, and I think that may just be how my hand works. It's just, and for the longest time, I noticed I had a style, and it was recognizable. And at
Mhm.
first, I didn't like it. I didn't like that style. It wasn't what I wanted my style to look like. But I began. It's kind of like when you have a dislike of yourself because you just don't have confidence or uh, things. So you feel bad about yourself. You're just not worthy. And then you realize as time goes on and maturity levels and things happen, you're like, I'm not a bad person. I do good.
Yeah.
And that's the way with my art. I start seeing it. I said, well, that is good. I like that. And people like it. And so I started to like the people that have those self doubts start to learn to love themselves. I started to learn to
Mhm.
love my style, and I'm really happy with it because it's working. It's working. And I was always afraid That's the self-doubt part. It's not working. It's not working. It's not good enough. It's not right. But it is. I mean, not to brag
Right.
about myself, but it's working, and I'm happy with it. And other people are
Well, and
happy, and that's important.
it's building self character, and I think noticing yourself, your flaws, your idiosyncrasies, where you need to grow, where you need to practice or build your craft more. I think it's more of a character builder. So I think all creatives go through that stage of self reflection and doubt and self criticism, things like that. I mean, it's part of the creative
Yeah.
process. That's why they're artists.
Yeah, I mean, artists are self-centered, we're all wrapped up into ourselves, and so, and when we're putting that work out there, we're putting part of ourselves out there. So naturally, we're going to
Mm,
see
absolutely.
everything about us come back at us, and all these doubts, but other people see it, and they get to see you, they get to see your people tell me how much they see my character in it, and how much uh, uh, is in me is in my work, and I think that's a good thing because that's what I want. I want this work to be honest and accurate. And so when I do it, I reflect
Mhm.
my people too. So when they see that, I want other people to see it and know that this is an honest portrayal of my people. Comes from my heart. It comes from in a lot of ways. It feels like it's a spiritual thing for me, And I've had things happen in my life that reflect that. I had spiritual things happen to me that got me back into my art after I quit for 14 years after the death of a couple of my daughters. That motivated me to get back into this, to use this gift from the Creator to create these pieces that I had a purpose with it. It wasn't just a hobby. It was more than a
Right,
job.
right.
There was a purpose to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what sorry to hear about your daughters, and I guess it did was a time for you to kind of recognize what you bring to the world and to the Native American community in your artwork. What do you think is a significant and recognizable being a Muskogee Creek artist versus, Osage or Comanche or Hopi? What's recognizable to the trained or untrained eye?
When they look at my work, what they see, that they can recognize it as that,
Mhm.
uh, the subject matter. I mean, I paint a lot of things that Muskogee people, they recognize it right off. I'll do ceremonial grounds, dances, ceremonial dances, and people say, "Is this so and so ground? Because this looks like my ground," but I don't paint a particular ground or a particular person or a particular dance. Um, I put that essence out there, what it is, and I let that audience, make their conclusions when they see that dance.
Mhm.
And I make that connection enough that people look at it and they think, "Oh, that looks like my ground," even though it's a ground that I don't paint from photographs. I paint from what I've seen and memories. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, so that's what I paint when I do it. I don't look at something when I paint. I'm just working on it. And so when people see that, they're getting a little glimpses of my memories of what I've seen. And then I guess their mind and their hearts are filling in that rest of that pieces, and they're seeing what they need to see in that work. Um, so I think that's what it's very recognizable as being Muskogee, and I love that. I love that. And sometimes that makes it a little rough when you go to a show and people aren't used to seeing Muskogee images, and they may not
Right.
recognize it as being native because it's not what they're thinking native. But Muskogee people recognize it, and that's who I'm really painting
Right.
for. If the other people see it and want to learn more about it, I'll sit down and tell you about it. I love talking about it, and I think it's a great learning thing too. Sometimes it sparks an interest. Well, what is this? I don't recognize this. What is going on here? And I can tell them, here, this is what it is. And Muskogee people, I don't have to. They're already telling me, "Oh, I love this. This looks just like so and so or this grounds or whatever." So, but,
Right.
that's what I think sets me apart from. It's just the fact that I stay with that true to that subject matter, and it's very
Yeah.
recognizable.
Well, that's part of your DNA and who you are, and I think that's probably indicative and very your soul comes out in your pieces, so it's a part of you each time. Um, when you do your pieces, do you and you have those visions at the early hours of the morning? You go straight to work, and start painting or drawing, or do you kind of like sketch it out, thinking, okay, I'm going to reinterpret it this way, and this is what I collectively remember?
Well, that's the thing. I usually don't do a lot of sketches or studies. I just go straight to the
Straight to the work.
straight to the work and work on it from there. And as far as laying it out and everything, I might make some slight sketches with pencil on to whatever it is I'm working on, just to kind of lay it out real quick. But most of the time, I just go straight to it, and it's almost like an instinct. As far as balance and the layout and everything, just comes to me, and it seems to be working. Nothing ever is to my eye, and from what I've heard, it's not just, oh, you should move this here or put this here. Um, Probably could, if you really critiqued it hard or whatever, But I think it's just because the way it comes to me and that spirit that moves me to do it, it comes out. It comes out the way it needs to. Does that make sense? It
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
it
Yeah,
just comes out. I don't. It's almost like I'm being guided by something else that's doing it. That
right.
something's moving through me. And that's why I always said this ability to do this is a gift from the Creator. He gave me this gift to do this, and so I use this gift, and it's what I do in this creation. I think about other things that I do. I'm a good person. I don't do bad things. I'm not a superhero. I try to live a good
You
life,
know,
but this is the one thing that I do that it seems to be the thing that I'm meant to do in this life. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer or anything. I'm this, and this is what I do.
I think art, creates emotions no matter if it's painting or if it's pottery or basket weaving or beadwork. It creates our human natural emotions, our senses. I think it stirs them up, and it's a thought process. It gets you thinking. And again, it's part of your story and our story collectively as a Native American peoples, that we create those emotions and then create that thought process and questions to be asked, who are you? Where'd you come from? What's this mean? Why do you do it this way? Why is this dance this way? And so on and so forth. So I think that's part of being a creative artist. Do you take risks, do you think, in your artwork?
I do sometimes. I'll take a risk. Through the years, I've done pieces that I'm just not quite sure how they're going to be. When you take them to a show, there's usually a theme to the show, or
Right,
there's things
right.
you want to take in. But every now and then, I'll get bold, and I'll take in a piece that I may not quite sure how it'll be received. But I got to take that risk. I feel like it's got to be done. One piece that I recently took to the Muskogee Art Market, that was last weekend, was a piece that I've been toting around for 25 years. I did it as a student piece at the
Oh,
Institute of
wow.
American Indian Arts, and it had uh, it had a history. It had a long history. It's a toilet. It's called Andrew Jackson's Toilet in Hell, and it's an actual commode.
Love it.
And it started out as a student project at the Institute of American Indian Arts. I had a 3D design class with Karita Coffee, and the assignment was Indian chair, and she showed us examples of previous students' work. And one was an old wooden antique chair, and it was just covered with arrows, like a pincushion or a porcupine, and it was called Custer's chair. And I thought, that is so cool. I want to do something about with our version of Custer, Andrew Jackson.
Right,
So I
right.
scoured the secondhand stores there in Santa Fe looking for an old chair to start the basis of my work, and I couldn't find a chair, that fit what I was thinking I needed. But I did find an old toilet. It was laying in a dark room at a Salvation Army thrift store, and I don't think it was for sale because it was in a room the lights were off, and it was laying there sideways on its side in the dark. And I asked the lady if she'd sell it to me. She kind of looked shocked at first, and she goes, "Yeah, yeah, I'll sell it to you." So I brought it back to my dorm room, and it's one of those kind of things, like I was saying, it came to me a dream, and then the motivation hit me, and I just went right into working on it. And it was an older toilet, had a wood seat, and it has the old those antique fixtures that fix the seat onto the commode itself. I started carving that wood. I carved the presidential seal out, painted it, gouged the wood in the seat, and then I went around and found old rusty nails from old pallets. Took them out and I drove them through that seat. So that seat's ringed with these different size rusty nails. Um, it didn't have a tank top, but I made a tank top. And since it was a student piece, I used cardboard and I fashioned this big old Andrew Jackson head on the top of it. And then I found all this information about, the Trail of Tears and his Injured Removal Act and all these just little bits and pieces about Andrew Jackson, printed them out and applied them all over it and painted up. It fixed it up real nice. And I thought, well, I hope this fits the project, as a chair. It wasn't a chair, but you do sit on it. So
Right.
I lugged this big old heavy thing to class, figuring, yeah, this isn't going to fly. She loved it. She loved it, and she took pictures of it, and so it was the next example of the chair. And at the time, the jeweler Kenneth Johnson, he would visit our classes. She'd have him come to our classes and give talks about business of art and everything. She showed it to him, and he had just started his. He just got his fellowship with the Smithsonian. And so he was traveling around the country and giving presentations. Well, he took some of the slides that she took of the toilet with him as part of his presentation on where Indian art is at today. And he brought it with him and he was showing it. And so I was getting phone calls for a while there. Hey, are you the guy that did that Andrew Jackson toilet? I love that, everything. So, so that the beginning of that, and so I loved it, and I thought, oh, this is a great piece. It's going to blow up because it's going everywhere. So I take it to a show at the Creek Council House Museum, and this is before Creek Nation, the Muskogee Nation, took over the council house. It was still owned by the city of Muskogee, and it was ran by I think Creek Indian Memorial Association. I don't even believe they were Indian uh, people on this group or whatever, but they had an art show. And they had Kenneth Johnson. They brought him in as their the judge for the show, and so I put that piece in there. And at the time I didn't know Kenneth was there, but I guess the curator of the show with the museum refused that piece because she goes, "That's not art. That's a commode. That's not art." And Kenneth said, "Are you crazy?" He goes, "That is art." He goes, "That's a contemporary piece of art done by a Muskogee artist. It's a protest piece. It's a piece of art, and it needs to go in the show, or I'll walk." He threatened to leave the show, so they put it in. Wow. And it didn't win any awards, but I brought it back, and it's been with me for years. And through the years, I've worked on it. I've got a base for it, and it used to sit on the floor. It's now mounted on this base. I actually used the ring that you'd actually mount a toilet to a floor with to hold it on there. I reworked the top. It's all done on wood now. I've done all kinds of work on it. And also, when it was a student piece, I had a printing class, and I had Melody Ozzie was my instructor there. I made that's when the same year I made this was the year that Jackson's image on the $20 bill went from the smaller size to the big size. Right. And so I printed hand silk screened a bunch of those, and they're going down the toilet, on the inside. I was worried about, someone said, "Oh, are you worried about making counterfeit money by doing that?" I said, "Hey, no, no one's going to take on one side bigger than normal, dollar bill. It's not even the same correct color green." I said, "I'm not worried about counterfeiting." But in the back of my head, I was a little worried. So I thought, "Oh, am I pushing this envelope a little too hard by doing this?" So anyway, longer story, even longer. I told Kenneth, we were next to each other at the Muskogee Art Market, and a couple of days before it took place, I thought, I'm going to drag that out. I'm bringing it up there. And I texted him, "Hey, Kenneth, I'm bringing Andy to the art market." He goes, "Dude, do it. I'm right next to you, and we've got stories about this piece." So I brought it in and put it up, and I figured, I'm going to get that. That's a toilet. You need to get it out, because it doesn't. It's painted and it's decorated up, and it doesn't. You can tell it's a toilet, but it doesn't look like a toilet, like just a
Right.
commode
Right.
sitting there. You're not going to want to just use it, think, oh, here's the men's room. You can tell it's a piece of art. I mean, it's more of a piece of art than Duchamp's The Fountain. You remember that for R. Mutt, the
Yeah.
urinal?
Yeah.
You could tell that was this is a piece of art. And what was more than just a ready-made piece of art. But there was that doubt that, am I pushing the envelope with a toilet? Even though I've done a political statement, and the thesis behind it when I presented it to the class was, I figured in his time Jackson never had the convenience of an indoor toilet, and now he's got one, and it's this one, and this is his
Yeah.
throne for eternity that he has to sit on, and hopefully he has diarrhea, and this is where he sits because he didn't think of our comforts or our pain that he put us through when he moved us from
Exactly.
our homelands. And so this is part of the karma, and this is where he spends his eternity now. And the funny part, someone mentioned when they were there, and they're saying, yeah, he's wiping his own tail end with his own face in those $20 bills. But yeah, that's
This is
one of
what
those
we think.
pieces that I did, that I pushed the envelope, that I just thought, you know, I've done
Why
other
not?
pieces through the years, and they're usually political pieces. Um, but yeah,
Now, has anyone tried to purchase that piece that you carried around for 25
yeah,
years?
because he never leaves my studio. He sits here with plastic around him, looking at me kind of through that clear plastic, kind of creeping me out. But a lot of people said that needs to be in a museum. That needs to be, and I've had referenced several times, that needs to be in the Smithsonian. And I've had several people during the art market tell me that, including a couple that had just came back from DC, and they were showing me images of some of the things that they had seen at the museum. They go, it would fit perfect in there. That's where it needs to go. So hopefully, as word gets out, that old Andy will be leaving my presence, because, as Kenneth says, it's time you move on. He needs to find a home, and it needs to be seen. And it's an important piece. And this is his word. This is an important piece of art. And so I would love for someone, I keep putting the word out there. It needs to be seen. It's a statement, and it's a statement that
Absolutely.
needs to be seen and needs to be understood, because a lot of people forget and don't realize what this man did. All they know is he's on the $20 bill. Other than that, they haven't a clue as to what he did.
And it's not that long ago. It's not ancient history.
It's
The
not.
repercussions are people are still feeling it to this day. So it's still in modern day history what he did. I don't think it's not obviously not part of the educational system per se.
Yeah.
So besides your toilet, what else is a poignant piece that you were surprised by its response or didn't get the response that you thought it was going to get?
Well, I recently did a piece, and it's new, and I just put it out there at the market this last weekend. It was the first time it was seen. Um, it's a piece. It's a scenery of. It's kind of a landscape piece. Uh, there's a river running down the center of it. And on one side of the river, it's an ancient scene. It's older people in the old homelands, and there's mounds in the background, and in the foreground there's men making dugout canoes. They're working on canoes, and they're putting one into the water. And then on the other side, it's a modern day scene. There's a pickup out there, and there's people out there, and they're working on making another dugout canoe. And the name of that was Keeping Our Ancestors' Ways Alive. Um, and I figured it would get more response, because here's ancient ways and modern ways separated by the river of time. But um, no one really paid much attention to it. And of course, I guess it was in competition with Andrew Jackson's toilet sitting in the front of my booth. But I had other works there, as well, and it got more attention. But this one piece, there's very few people really notice it, and it's a fairly good size 30 by 48 piece. So it surprises you. Sometimes I figure someone would see that and just go, "Oh my gosh," A couple did, but mainly it was overlooked. One of the highlight points of it is the University of Tennessee in Knoxville is going to purchase this piece for their collection for an upcoming show. And so it is. They loved it, and it's got a home. But I was just shocked that it didn't get any more attention than what it did, because
Mm.
it's a good piece, and I'm not just saying it because I did it. It's a
Yeah,
good piece, and it's
yeah.
one of
You
those that
got to
came to
self
me as a
promote
dream.
You got to self promote yourself. You got to
Yeah, and
put yourself out there, and
that's what my wife said. Talk about the work, and I try to promote it, and my wife says, or actually, it wasn't my wife as much as my youngest. Why do you always talk about your work? And I said, well, I'm not really bragging about it. I'm just talking about it because if I don't, no one else will. Because years I used to, before I started entering shows. I've said I've been doing this for 40 years, but I'm much
Mhm.
older than that, and I've been doing it for longer. Is because I did it for myself, and I never took it anywhere. I did it, and I just put it under my bed or kept it. Um, and one day my dad saw it and said, "You need to do something with this stuff. It's good." So that's when I started. And this is, in the early 80s before there was internet stuff. I didn't know there were shows out there for this stuff. And I just happened to run across the Indie Paintbrush Gallery in Siloam, Springs, Arkansas. We lived in Arkansas at the time. And I went in there and she liked my work. She said, "Oh, she says, you need to start entering shows." And she gave me these entry forms. It was Trail of Tears there in Tahlequah, the Five Civilized Tribes, Red Cloud Indian School. Those were my first three shows. And I had no idea that there was a place where you could send your work and sell it and promote it and stuff. And this, like I said, pre-internet, so I couldn't log on, look for shows, or put out you know pictures of my work or anything. And so I had to do that hustle. And all artists know this. You got to
Yeah,
get out there and do that footwork and talk about it. And once you get that buzz going, and that's a good thing to get a buzz going about
yeah,
art, you got to do that. And
yeah.
you're
Because
not
the art will
bragging.
start speaking itself and selling itself. But
Yeah, you got to get
you
someone's
got to be
attention.
representing yourself.
Yeah, you got to get their attention, and they'll see it, and then you let the work start, putting it out there, and it'll keep that attention.
So you mentioned. So are you doing the market circuit now?
Yeah, I used to do shows, and my artwork's been more places than I've ever been. At first I started just sending them out. And this is back when you used to have to send slides in. They didn't have JPEG images, or you had to send slides
Right.
in to get juried in, or you would just actually send the piece up. At Red Cloud, that's what you did. You just sent the piece out, and then Brother Simon, who was in charge for years of that show up there at Red Cloud Indian School, um, you'd send it up there, and I guess he would pick it up wherever you sent it to. Then he'd take it back to the school, and it would sell. It would sell. I never got anything back from Red Cloud. It would go up there and it would win a little award, or it would sell, and I never got anything back. And so, like I said, my work's been places, and when it would sell, I don't know where it goes. He'd send you something. Oh, it sold. I'm going to, you know, happy to tell you that your piece sold to so and so, and it went here. But a lot of shows I was entering, it would sell, and I'd get the check, but I never found out where it went. So that stuff
Where it
kind of
found.
spread out around the country, and that's why I get calls from somebody way out somewhere. I got a piece of yours we got years ago. I just wanted to tell you how much I love it, and I can't remember it because I've done so many pieces. So they'll send me a picture of it. And oh, I remember that piece, and I think that, oh, I sold that way out, like intertribal Indian ceremonial out in Gallup. But now it's up in the East Coast somewhere. Like wow, and they bought it when they were on vacation out there. And so yeah, it's always amazing. It's like
So
putting.
now we're in the digital age. Do you keep a catalog of every piece you create?
I try to, yeah, Instagram, Facebook, and sometimes I'll even post pictures as I'm working on it, so people can follow along, and they seem to like that. They can see me working on it, and then I post the original piece up after I'm done. So, and that helps me keep track of what I got. So, because sometimes I reference back, okay, what was the dimensions on that, and what the date and everything.
Right.
Um, I used to write it all
Do you
down.
ever do you ever have a reoccurring dream? It's like you do a piece and then you have the dream again and kind of reincorporate that dream into a new piece that's already been completed.
I've had dreams like that where I dreamed a piece, I've worked on that piece, and if that piece is still with me and I have that dream again, I may pull that piece back out and rework it and add that or change whatever came to me in that dream, because when it comes in, I'll see that. I'll say, oh, I should have done that. I like that. So that'll happen sometimes. Sometimes I will redo another piece. Um, Not the same piece, but I'll take that same info and make a new piece out of it. I guess it's kind of like you see reimagined like different movies from the past or TV shows, and they redo them, And I do that with some of my work. Hopefully, I get better success, and sometimes the reboot of some things don't, go over. So far it does, and that's the best thing when I'm doing this artwork. Is a lot of times the subject matter is the same, so you're not really changing it up too much. You're just changing the angle or the view of it. I did a piece a few years ago, or actually last summer. Um, I do a lot of ceremonial paintings, and I had a friend suggest, I wonder what one would look like from above, a stomp dance looking down, and the view we don't always see. And so I had done a piece like that earlier, probably in the late '90s, but it was instead of at an eye level, it was kind of looking down at an angle on it, but it wasn't a direct view straight down. So I did that. Um,
A bird's eye
a
view.
bird's eye view, and I called that one the creator's view of the ceremony. And it was a little watercolor piece, and it was one of those where I was just testing it out, doing this in watercolor. How's this going to play out? The shadows and the lighting and everything, because our ceremonies take place at night out in the country, so it's dark. So, when you're working in watercolor, you got to let those light colors first and then put the dark on top of it, because you're letting the white of the paper, that's where you're getting your glow from. So you got to work the opposite of what you do in oil, where you put the darks first and then the lights on top. So that was one of those kind of testing this out, because I hadn't done watercolor in a little while. So I was trying to get that mind back to, you need to do this first. And so it worked out really nice. And it was one of those kind of things. I took an idea I had, changed it around, took a suggestion from somebody, and made a new piece out of it. And it worked out, and I was really happy with it. And I sold that original piece, and I've sold a lot of prints of it. And I finally was able to see the guy that suggested doing that too. I saw him this week, and he bought a print of it. He really liked it. So, that was another one of those where and he was Muskogee, and so it reached my target audience, and they approved of it, and they're pleased with it, and they wanted to bring it into their home.
It has a home now.
It's got a home.
Got a home. What's your view? That's an important factor for a Native American artist.
I think being true to yourself. We got to take into account when you're doing this work. And for me, and I think that's important, is the accuracy and the honesty of it. But we've got a responsibility when we do this work to do our best work, our most honest, accurate. I know I say that a lot, but that's so important. Through the years, looking at art images of us done by other people other than us, and the inaccuracies, and just we've got a lot of work to cover to correct a lot of wrongs. And so I think that's very important for Native artists to put that out there. And if it comes from the heart, that's a good thing, because it's usually it's good. And so I think that's one of the most important things, that when we do our work, that it's a strong work, and because we're representing our people, and like I said, we're kind of record keeper. With the storytellers, cultural bearers in a way, and we do important work, and we're doing it not just for ourselves, but we're doing it for our ancestors and relatives yet to come, because that work will still be here long after we're gone, and they'll look back on it, and they may not know who we are, but they'll know that work, and they'll know, and we'll probably still be doing those same things today that we've done for years. They'll see it, they'll recognize it. hopefully it'll inspire younger generations. That's how I got started. I saw the older gentlemen's work, the A.Z. Blue Eagles and the Dick West, Woody Crumbo's work, Solomon McCombs, all those are old masters. That inspired me. And that's where, and hopefully our artwork, when we do our work, it'll for a younger generation will see, take up where we left off and go from there. Yeah, it's, you're asking how earlier how I got started with Indian art. And when I was younger, I had really bad eyesight. I was legally blind. And my father, as I said, was a sign painter, and he moved around a lot. So he moved us to Arkansas, and that's where I ran into a lot of. It was the '60s, and he moved to Northwest Arkansas, and it was the town he moved us into was not a good place during that period. Yeah. So there were no people of color in that area, and so I caught a lot of grief. Uh, just it was brutal at times.
I'm sure, yeah.
But anyway, they found out I had bad eyesight, and they took me to an eye doctor, and I was living in a world of fog and blur, but I was able to navigate through it. Um, and then, of course, I was nearsighted with the vision. I could see everything up close. And with drawing and doing things, it was like here in front of my face. So it was when things were far away, I couldn't see. So when I got to school, that's when the board, I couldn't see the board. I couldn't see what the teacher was showing us or anything. So I ended up going to the eye doctor. And I didn't know at the time the eye doctor was a collector of Native American art. And this was in Springdale, Arkansas. So it's the last place I figured, this place, this would be. So I got these new glasses and I put them on for the first time. And when I did, I was able to see his office was full of Native American art, the old flat style. And since he was a doctor and he was a fairly prominent doctor in that area, he could afford the good pieces, and he had a lot of pieces. And so after putting up with all the heartache I did for being Native in this segregated, uh, very non-diverse area, to see this after being blind all of a sudden, it was like a religious experience. All of a sudden, like the old thing, I could see, and what I saw was this art, and it was wonderful. And it imprinted itself upon me. It was, like I said, it was a spiritual thing. I was meant to see this. I was meant to be taken from where I was, put there at that time, have this eyesight that was poor, have that fixed, and to see this, all that came to that happened for that reason. And now I'm seeing it, and it stuck with me. And so I started trying to replicate that old flat style stuff, and it just stuck with me. And I didn't see it everywhere, couldn't find it in books where I was at. There was no internet, like I said, back then. So every year when I went back to the doctor, I was excited to go back because there they were, and I would see them. And that's another thing that stuck with me. I realized this is who I am, and this is what I need to do. And through the years, that's played out to where I'm at right now, and I'm still going on with it. And myself, my youngest is starting to pick up doing art too. And they had their first, well, not their first booth, but it was their third booth at Muskogee Art Market. And they're doing pen and ink work like I started out when I first started hitting the shows. And they're only 20. They're fixing to turn 21 in July. But just
following
knowing
your
that
footsteps.
the steps, and these younger people are picking it up. And that's why I say it's important, that we do this, and younger people. That's what I saw of the older people's work, and it inspired me. So that's what hopefully younger people who may looking for direction in life will see that, and then they'll find that direction, and things will work for them too, like that. And it's one of the things I feel like, that's a responsibility that I have as an artist. That's one of those things that I'm doing when I do my work. It's touching so many people in so many different ways that I don't even realize it. And sometimes it's not that I setting out to do this so much. It's just what I do, and it's doing it. And it's a good feeling that, this is what I'm doing in my life, and I have this gift, and it's a blessing.
You set your own path to your success. I mean, you were literally opened your eyes.
Yeah.
And saw your path, I guess. Very poignant. So, Johnny, are you represented anywhere? Do you have any exhibits going on?
Um, Coming up in November, I think it starts in November and runs until November of next year at the Hartshorn Atlanta International Airport. I'll have 4 pieces in that show. And I know that's the major show I have coming up right now. I have some other little art markets and things I'll be doing. Um,
Mhm.
Currently have some pieces that end in the end of this week that's been hanging for a month at Five Tribes Museum in Muskogee. Just finished up the Muskogee Art Market. Just put in my application for the Cherokee Art Market. Working on pieces for the University of Tennessee in Knoxville for that show that's coming up, and I think it's in 2024 is when that show is. And then they're talking to me about pieces for an upcoming show in 2025, possibly have more work
Wow.
in that. So that's further on down the road. Um, I know right now with PBS, there's a video documentary series that's coming out that they're going to have some of my work in. Of course, Reservation Dogs. I've worked in that. I just finished a big mural, and I got to see the test scenes for the scene that shows my mural. And I'm used to seeing my work, for the past 2 seasons in different sets, and hanging on the walls and stuff, and in scenes. And so, but this one, it's a mural, and it is the wall in the scene where 2 of the main characters are sitting in front of this my mural. That's the backdrop to them. And so I saw that. I was like, oh my gosh, that's not just a little painting or print on the wall. It's
It's
the
not a
it's
little
the
postage
wall.
stamp, you know.
And so,
That's a good way to be recognized.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I've got that going on. Of course, I get contacted every now and then about book covers. I did Joy Harjo, American Sunrise. I had to work on that book cover. This recent one that came back, a promise kept about the McGirt decision that OU Press put out. It had one of my works on the cover of it. I get contacted all the time from book companies that are doing stories about Trail of Tears or something about Muskogee people, and they buy the rights to use one of my images in their story. So I got all kinds of things going on, shows and those kind of things that come up. And I never know. I'm always getting phone calls or messages. Hey, we'd love to use your work. We want to work with you. And so, it's just I
It's
never
a
know
good
from
sign,
day to
sir.
day. So I've kind of don't have to do too many shows like I used to because I'm busy doing all these other things that come up. And so, um,
Keeping busy.
and the older I get, the outdoor markets, I usually don't do them anymore like I used to because it's just so hot out there. It's kind of rough on me. And then being a painter, fighting that wind a lot of times outside,
Right.
those paintings, it's like just little wind sails out there catching that wind. So, um,
They might find a new home themselves. You
yeah,
never
the
know.
next county. But yeah, I'm staying busy, and I'm getting to that age that this is uh, this is good. It's easy work for me, to be able to stay active and busy, and it's not so physically demanding. Not that great of health anymore, and so it's a good place to be. That I've got to this point in my career that I'll be able to, retire and still have make enough money to not have to worry about a lot of things. And as long as I can keep doing this, and I hope I can do it for as long as I'm able to live, breathe and everything, I'll keep doing it because I love it. I've got to do it. And like I said, it comes to me almost like a body function of like waking up and eating and everything. It just
Well,
is
it's
what
part
I
of who
do.
you are. It's part of
It's
it's part
me.
of Johnny. That's
Yeah.
You found your calling, and the spirits told you what you needed to do during your time on this earth.
Yeah. And I appreciate, I've got pieces that are uh Julie O'Keefe, working with Muskogee Creek Nation last year at the art
Mhm.
market, purchased a lot of work for Council Oak uh, Comprehensive Health Center, that new hospital.
Yeah.
So I got pieces in that, and I found out this weekend that uh, there's more opportunities coming up like that, and so they're wanting more work. So yeah, I'm staying busy.
So, do you do commission works besides just the pieces that you do that you collectively and pull from
That's
your
what
dreams
I
and
mostly
visions?
do that. I really don't like to do commission work because, like I said, these things come to me had like a dreams and visions and stuff. And then sometimes when I'm doing commission work, if you're doing something that's someone else's dream or what they're seeing, and a lot of times these people can't replicate what they're seeing themselves, so they want someone else to do it. And sometimes it's hard to get that same image that they're seeing. They'll tell you but when they're telling you something, you're seeing a different image. So when you put it down there, they're like, that's close, but that's not, And so it's easier for me and it seems more honest for me to do my work and then let the people come and see it, make their decisions about this is what I want. I like that better than trying to do what someone else wants you. It's hard to.
Less restrained, I would say.
Yeah. So I do get commissions, the kind that were, could you do me a painting of this, and whatever your interpretation is, I know I'll love it because I love your work. I'll do those kind of commissions, but it's kind of hard to do the one I've had this dream and it looks like this and that. It's hard for me to get it exactly right. I want it to be right for them. I want them to be satisfied with what they get.
Right. You can't, what I would say, you can't direct an artist. You have to have that creative liberty to do what you need to do because you're the professional. So any closing words of wisdom, sir?
Well, if you're trying out art and you just feel like you can't do it, or you get you can't get juried in or something, don't let that stop. If this is what you're meant to do, you keep doing it. Because I didn't always make shows. I've been shows I didn't get juried in. I don't always win prizes. It's always a surprise when I do. But I don't do it for the prize money. I do it because I got to do it. Is what I do. So don't let anything stop you. Always be willing to learn and enjoy what you're doing. And it's really rewarding in so many ways. And so just keep going with it. Because we need more artists. We need these people to come up and take our places when we're gone. We need to keep it going, especially with native artists. We need to keep that going. It's very important.
We got to keep on telling the story. It's never going to end. Well, sir, it's been my pleasure and a great honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you very much. It's been quite an honor for you to be interested in talking to me and about my work, and recognizing me, and coming on, wanting me to be a part of your podcast. That's quite an honor for me that, you wanted to include me in this.
Absolutely. We couldn't do it without you guys. So we're glad you're here and you keep on telling your story. So thank you very much, Johnny, for being on today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.